So my name is Lorelei Pisha, for those of y'all who don't know me yet. I am the newest member of the Virginia Early Intervention Professional Development Team, working with Corey and Lisa and Seth, who are all here as well. This is my very first event that I'm hosting, so I thank you in advance for any feedback and possibly a little bit of grace that I might need as I'm learning all the different pieces here. But I'm really excited to be here. But that is plenty about me. We are here to talk about transition and why it can be so challenging, and also consider those challenges from some different perspectives and different hats. And lenses that impact or may impact the transition process. And to do that with us is Suzanne McDonald. Suzanne is a service coordinator as well as a parent, a mom. She's going to talk to us a little bit more about who she is, and then we'll jump into all things transition. All right, Suzanne, turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Lorelei, and thank you everybody for joining today. I'm super excited to cover the topic of transition. Like Lorelei said, I am a service coordinator with the infant and toddler down in Blue Ridge, down in Charlottesville. I've been a service coordinator for about 8 years. I did take a little bit of a break recently. I did something else from 2015 to 2021, but came back in June of, this is 23 of 22. So I am also the mom of a 24-year-old on the autism spectrum that actually started services when he was 2 with the infant and toddler connection of the Blue Ridge. And we have been through many transitions in our life. We went from early intervention to preschool to elementary school to middle school to high school, and now we're in adulthood. So I'm not an expert on this topic by any means, but I'm hoping to share a multifaceted perspective and help us understand the importance of transition and starting that early in the process. And today you'll probably hear some personal stories from me, but you'll also hear some maybe current or previous kids that I've had in early intervention that we can walk through this transition process with. So I'm going to turn it back over to Lorelei.
All right. We wanted to start with 2 opportunities to learn a little bit more about you all. So the first question is, and we're going to use the stamp feature, what is your role in early intervention? All right, so welcome everyone. We're going to go ahead and clear those stamps, and we're going to ask you another question. All right, get ready to stamp again. All right. What is your comfort level now with transition?
Okay, so it sounds like we have got a good variety of people that are comfortable. We've got a couple confidence, kind of in the middle between uncomfortable and depends on the situation, and a couple in between depends on the situation and comfortable. So that's great. Yeah. If we could go ahead and clear the screen and move to the next slide. So this is a really informal time together. So I'm going to be looking to those that are comfortable and confident to help me with the process, and those that are not so comfortable, or depending on the situation, to feel comfortable in putting questions in the chat box, and we will work together as a team to come to some good answers and hopefully some good resources for everybody. So we're going to start off just kind of getting your mind around transition and how important it is in our lives. We know as service coordinators or service providers that transition is a part of our responsibilities in working with families in early intervention. And it is a task that we need to complete. But I'm hoping to come across at the end of today with understanding that transition is a part of everyday life. It's a process that we all have to go through at some point in our life. And it's part of our responsibility is to guide families through this process so that they can support their children wherever they are in the transitions in their life. So what I wanted to do, first of all, was to think about yourself and think about what you had to do to get here today. And so if we could just pop in the chat some of the things that that you had to do to prepare yourself for getting here today. Okay. I can share one thing that I have to do is I am reschedule meetings. Yes. Wilhelmina. Yes. Be comfortable. Yes. Clear your schedule for this time frame. Cleared your calendar. Yes. Finish putting in notes. Yes. Skip lunch. Yeah, my tummy's grumbling too. Oh, prepare. Oh, the chat screen goes by so quick. Rachel said, prepare my lunch ahead of time, complete as much paperwork as possible prior to the meeting time, clear calendar. Laura Lee had rushed from home, visit and logged in 2 minutes late. Yeah. Schedule in my calendar, skip lunch. Yes. Block out time and schedule. Lots of great things coming in. You know, for me personally, I have to prepare some downtime between the last task and moving to another task. So sometimes I find myself responding to emails and I'm like, oh, I have to stop because I need 5 minutes to prepare for the next thing. So yeah, it takes a process to prepare for transition. So if we could maybe go to the next slide. And I'm going to share a little brief story, just thinking about all of this information that we've put in and kind of what it takes for us to process and get prepared for transition. I'm going to share a story, kind of like a case study, and then we're going to think about this child and this family and how transition might be challenging for them. So this little one is a child that was in foster care. He was placed in one family and with a sibling. And then after about a month or so, he was removed from that foster care and placed into another foster care setting. And he's going to be 2 in April. So we're talking about, 3 in April. So we're talking about transitioning him to the school systems. And so I want us to think about the challenges that this child and this family might have on top of everything else. You know, what are some of the things that potentially could be challenging for this child and family as they transition? And you could just pop into chat. If you feel comfortable unmuting and want to unmute, you can do that as well. And please share.
Hey, this is Sarah. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Sarah.
So I feel like I'm kind of in that boat right now with the family. Very, very similar situation. And right now they are just overwhelmed with all of the things. So as a service coordinator, just making sure like, hey, these are the options. You know, you don't have to pick and choose every single one, but just be there for the family and let them know like, hey, I'm here for you every step of the way, and take a minute to think about what you feel is best for the child. And because preschool might not be the best thing for the child. Maybe it's outpatient services right now. Like you just have to kind of let the family know like, hey, take a breath. And I feel like that's the most important thing, because they can just get so overwhelmed and they're like, oh my goodness, I don't even know where to begin. And, you're kind of that person that can just be like, take a deep breath and let's look at all of the options. It's not something that you have to make a decision with right this second. Take some time to think about it.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, it is an overwhelming process. It's a lot of information for families to have to think about and kind of move forward with. Rachel said the fear of moving into a new space, being acclimated day to day. I mean, you think about this child and his attachment. He's being moved from place to place to place, and now being moved into a whole new place with a whole new family. And the foster family is settling in with the child, getting to learn, the things that work well for this child. So it's a lot of changes, a lot of attachment things going on there. Yeah, and foster care is a temporary. I'm sorry, the chat is blocked, so I'm trying to read this. Yeah, it's a temporary with changes happening unexpectedly. Yeah, just increases the number of transitions for the child and the family. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit more about some of the other challenges that families or parents may face in the transition process, questions that they may have. And feel free to put those in the chat or unmute. What are some things that you think children and families are finding challenging in the transition process? Transportation is a huge thing. I can tell you, when my son was transitioning from early intervention to preschool, my worst fear was him getting on a school bus. What does that look like for my child who has difficulty when transitions on this big, my little tiny child on this big school bus? It was really, it was a very scary thing, but I can tell you he loved the school bus. So he would wait for that bus to come every day. So, it was a fear of mine, may not have been a fear of his. It's just scary. Little ones, big school. Yeah, transportation, just kind of the whole process of moving. And what are some of the challenges as service coordinators that we face with, and service providers that we face with transition?
Hey, I don't mean to just keep unmuting. I feel like it's just easier to talk sometimes.
It's fine, yes.
Now I just lost my train of thought. Oh, I was gonna say, even before, like, if we're doing like a transition planning conference with the school system, I find that a lot of parents, again, they feel overwhelmed, but they're not really sure what to say. So as a service coordinator, I try to let them know, hey, they want to know what your input is and where your child is at this exact moment. But I just let the families know, hey, I'm here for you. I'm also going to be advocating for you, because the school system is only getting, the IFSP, they're getting exactly what you're saying. They see your scores, but you have to, as a service coordinator, especially for those parents that don't feel comfortable just talking, during that meeting, it's kind of your job to be an advocate for that family and be look, I wouldn't be sending a referral in, if I didn't think the child was going to be potentially eligible for this. So that's just something that, I think as a service coordinator, it's really important to just advocate for your families.
Absolutely. And in return, you're teaching the families to advocate for themselves. I mean, that's, this is so important in those early years so that they can learn through the process how to advocate for their child. Sometimes parents have a very negative perspective about sending their kids into school. And so they're providing parents with resources, helping them understand that the early intervention system works a little bit different than the school system, making sure that they have had access to understanding their rights under special education. So there's a lot of education and support and resources for parents at this time. Sometimes parents just aren't ready for that transition. Like I said earlier, for me, it was scary to think about your child being in that school setting, especially at such a young age. There's also a challenge between finding that balance, and this is coming from a parent perspective, finding that balance between what my child needs and what I think my child needs. You really need to help parents figure that out, that this is talking about things like least restrictive environments. Sometimes that's a little bit challenging for families to understand. So making sure you're helping to educate parents with that information. And I'm going to go through the chat here real quick. It looks like we have a couple of people not having parental involvement. Yeah. Rachel, do you want to speak? Do you want to expand on that a little bit more, or you can type that in the chat or unmute?
Yes, I can unmute. We are having a difficult time with trying to get parents on board in our area. Our school system in this area is consolidating with another school system, and there's a lot of negativity behind all that. And I think that's affecting the parents in the area.
Yeah. So have you guys been able to come up with some strategies to help families feel a little more comfortable about that transition? Or if anybody else has any thoughts that they want to share, that would be great.
Right from the get-go, when we first meet with parents, we start talking about that process. And we want them to be aware of that process and how it looks and what we do to help them, so that they're not blindsided several months down the road and, ooh, what's this? Right.
Yeah. I mean, I start talking about transition from the very, very beginning, even with babies. We start talking about transition, because the sooner you can start having those conversations and providing resources for families and giving them the information that they need, hopefully when it gets to that point, they're not quite as overwhelmed, or they have the information they need to make the decisions. Lily says, taking the time to discuss all of the options. Yeah, that's a lot. There's a lot of options out there. School referrals are not the only option. Some kids are not eligible. I recently had a child that had hearing loss that was receiving early intervention services, but has been referred to the school systems, but she's not eligible for school services. So we're having conversations about some of the other options that are available to that family. And Lily said, sometimes I feel rushed into trying to talk about all of the options. Yeah. Especially when those kids are coming in new to us and they're close to that transition age. Yeah. So it's all real stuff. Yeah, and it does seem to be, Lily's let also have more parents concerned about the public school option in the past year or two, based on the current climate that we're in. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, I had this happen to a family with hearing loss. We pushed back and we're able to get some minimal services. That's great, Michelle. Great. Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of challenges out there for everybody. And so as service coordinators and service providers, we need to build our toolkit so that we can share that information with other families. Does anybody have any other challenges that they maybe want to put in chat or unmute and talk about before we move on? All right. So let's just, again, kind of go through some things that we may have learned through the process. And again, I'm not the expert on this, so I'm hoping to get some feedback from you guys. But, you know, some of the things that I've learned along the way is, like I said earlier, the sooner you start planning, the better. The sooner you start preparing parents for that transition, the better, and the more resources that you can give is great. And helping parents understand that transition is a part of life. We all have to make a transition at some point. And sometimes, you know, it's hard to let go of having that person coming into your home and that relationship that you've built with your early intervention team and moving into the school setting or whatever that transition is. But it's really important to, especially children and parents that are transitioning into the school system, to understand that they are still a part of that team, that they still know their child best, and that they need to feel comfortable in being a part of that team. Again, knowing your resources and the options that are available, and we're going to share some resources here in just a little bit that will hopefully help that you can share with families. Preparation, just always being prepared, understanding the transition process, going to your practice manual and reading and understanding the transition process. I'm sure, I think most of us, if not all of us, were in the state of Virginia, but if there's anybody that's not, Virginia is the only state where a child can actually transition into schools at the age of 2, if they're 2 before September 30th of a school year. So sometimes that kind of complicates and adds that added thing to the transition stage. So just understanding the process, going to your practice manual, understanding how it all works in the procedures. And if you're having challenges, talk to your systems manager or your coworkers and see, you know, talking through those challenges. Emotional support for families. You know, we do that on a daily basis in early intervention, but it's especially important as families are preparing to transition and thinking about that next step in their life. They might need a little extra emotional support to get through that. One of the lessons that I learned, and I like to share with parents, and I learned this early on, is we don't want to burn bridges. The relationship that families have with, especially with school systems or whatever that transition will be, could be long-term relationships. So we want to approach those as team members and not burning bridges as we go along. This is a lifelong, could be a lifelong relationship that you're building there. And then always meeting the family where they are. You know, if you have a family that's not quite ready, just keep having that conversation and giving them the information so that they can make those informed decisions on their own. Does anybody have anything they'd like to share, or any other challenges that they've had as far as transition goes? Feel free to put it in chat or unmute. I'm just going to go through the chat real quick, see if I missed anything. Yeah, Michelle says that I talk about transition at intake and again at the IFSP. Yeah. It's been a long time, but getting to see a classroom was always helpful for families. Yeah, that is helpful. And it has been challenging, especially over the last couple of years, getting into classrooms and seeing what it's like. But you know, if for some reason you're not able to get in, maybe the teacher could do a video of the classroom and show you their weekly schedule and what that looks like. Lily says, as a former Part B ECSC teacher, I think taking the time to develop the relationship with the school system as a Part C provider is important. Yes, in our area, we have several school systems that we have to, that we work with, and each school system does it very differently. So it's important to develop those relationships and understand their process so you can help support families. Lily goes on to say, I knew my service coordinators very well and enjoyed a cordial relationship with them, which translated into more productive meetings and new students. Yeah, making sure that when you do a referral that you're touching base with that, first of all, know who that person is that you need to contact at the school systems, and touching base with them to be invited to meetings and be a part of that process is really important. Wilhelmina says, I talk to the parent about transition every month, no matter how old the child. Yes, absolutely. Because we've talked a lot about transition to school, but that's sometimes kids meet all of their goals and don't need early intervention services anymore. So what is their transition there? So having those conversations early about, okay, well, transition to home, transition to daycare. There's a lot of options as far as what transition looks like for each family. Oh yeah, Wilhelmina, or if there's anybody else, I'd love to know how you document those conversations about transition monthly. Wilhelmina, would you like to share, or anybody else have any?
So what I do, I tell them, we do offer school to children 2 years. And I tell them I say it's special education. And I tell them, don't get alarmed when I say special education, because it doesn't mean that child will stay in that class from school age out. It's just the beginning, and it is special to that child because they're going at 2 years old. And I tell them, think about it. I know they're young right now, but think about when they reach 2 years old, what would you like to do with your child? That's what I do.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I mean, how many times have you heard a parent say, well, I don't want my child to be labeled for the rest of their lives? And so having those conversations about what that means, and it could be that the child needs services for a long time, or it could be they just need a little bit of help, initially to get into kindergarten. I mean, it's really all about inclusion and making that a good, safe environment for kids and families. Yeah, thank you for sharing. Perfect. Before we move into our resources, again, I wanted to open it up to any other challenges that you may have. And again, this is a safe space. We want people to use this as an opportunity to chat with each other about things that have worked, things that don't work. What's your biggest challenge with transition? Anybody feel like unmuting or typing in the chat? All right, I guess we can move on to sharing our resources. And I'm gonna let Lorelei explain the Padlet. Okay.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing and then change my screen here to a Padlet. And this is very new to me, and I find it already to be an exciting way to be able to collaborate and share resources kind of in real time. Seth, do you mind putting the link in the chat? Yep, Seth already has it there. He's a step ahead of me. So you'll find in the chat, if you go ahead and click on the link, you can view this Padlet yourself and you can participate as a guest, and I'll show you how to do that in a little bit. But first, Suzanne's going to talk us through some of her resources that she finds particularly helpful. And I will then share a couple of resources from the Virginia Early Intervention team. And then we'd love for you all then to be able to share anything you find particularly helpful and that you like to share with families or that you share with colleagues around transition.
Yeah, so these are just some of the things that I have found. We talked a lot about sharing resources with family and having that, transition toolkit. So see that these are some of the ones that I have found helpful in working with families. The Virginia Department of Education has their website and they have revamped that. I know there were some link issues. I haven't checked lately, but I'm hoping that they've resolved some of the link issues that they had. But this is parents need to understand their rights, just like in early intervention and our procedural safeguards. Special education has their rights as well. So, families have their rights under special education. So if you do have a child that's transitioning or potentially transitioning into school services, this is a great resource to share. They can get the rights documents ahead of time and review those, because it's important that they understand what their rights are under special education. So the next one, if you're not familiar, is PETSE, which is the Parent Educational Advocacy Training Center. So under IDEA, each state is required to have a parent training institute, and PETSE is that one for the state of Virginia. And if you haven't been to their website, they just have, it's just chock full of really great information, and from birth all the way up to 22. So this is a great resource to share for families. They have under all of their programs, but specifically for us under early intervention, they have created these fact sheets where they've broken down an aspect of disabilities or special education or a certain rights, those kind of Medicaid waivers, those kind of things. They've broken them down into these really easy to read one-page fact sheets. If you've ever tried to navigate some of these websites, especially like waivers and those types of things, it can be really overwhelming, but they've done a really nice job of creating these fact sheets. They also do free trainings, both online and in person, for families and professionals. So I encourage you, if you haven't taken a look at their website, to utilize their websites and their resources. They also do consultations with families. So if you have a family that has transitioned into school services and they have questions about their IEP, they can contact PETSE and talk to somebody about their questions and navigating the IEP process. The next one, many areas have local parent resource centers. This is the Parent Hub. So you can go to this and find the parent resource centers in your area. Not every area has one, but you could find really good information about accessing information there. And then, of course, there's Head Start. If you're, in my opinion, lucky enough to have early Head Start in your area, woohoo! But Head Start is always a great place to have, or great information to have and to share with families. So you could go to their website and get information there. Private daycares and childcare centers. If you're not aware of Child Care Aware of Virginia, that is a state resource and referral agency for childcare. So families can go on there and do a search for both centers and family child care and get information. And you can be specific with your searches. So if you have a family that has a child with special needs and they're looking for a childcare provider that maybe has some experience, you can do a search based on that. And so that's a really good resource, for families. It's challenging. I know in our area, especially, it's really challenging to find childcare. And we very often get new babies, and they're like, well, when should we start looking for childcare? And it's, it should have been 6 months ago. But anyway, yeah, so this is a really good resource to share with families, where they can go and do a search. And then it also has some really good resources there as well. And so the next one, your local community service boards. If you've got children on waivers, this is a good resource to have. If you've got families that are struggling with mental health, substance abuse, these are great connections for families to have in moving forward. And then, of course, the waiver service, Medicaid waiver services, that can be really complicated process for families. So that's good information to share with them. And then lastly, we have the child care I think that there's a couple more. The child care subsidy, if you're not familiar with that, that's where families can apply for a subsidy where either a portion or all of their child care fees can be paid for through the subsidy program. So, like I said, if you go to the Child Care Aware and you're looking at the child care provider, it may be that provider is a subsidy provider. So that's a great resource for families in paying for child care. And then lastly, this one is specific, is the United Way in our area. They have early learning scholarships and an early learning program there. So if your local United Way has resources for families, either scholarships or finding childcare or daycare centers, that's a good resource as well. Corey says the VDOE site is being revamped. They are aware of some of the snafus, but they're working on it. I wasn't sure if that had been resolved. So thank you, Corey. So just hang in there with that. They did a big overhaul of that site. So I know it's taken some time to work through that. And I think Lorelei is going to share some more resources, and then we're going to look to you guys to add some things in as well.
Yeah, and it looks like some of you are already in there adding, which is wonderful. Let's take a look at a few of the resources that are available through the Virginia Early Intervention Professional Development site. So I've already got it open up here. The first one is a collection of resources, articles, presentations, tools, and of all things transition on this, this topic landing page for you here. And what I like is that you can come down here and you can get info that's very specific to Virginia, like some of the things here that you would find on the Virginia Department of Education website, perhaps that Suzanne was just talking about. And also, really understanding too, as Suzanne said, Virginia does have some things that are very particular to Virginia. So getting this kind of information is very important. We have some handouts that you can find helpful, the transition guidebook. This is the PACER Center as well, and I find them to be a really great resource and go-to for questions about policies and procedures and things like that. This one, I think someone just put this up too as a separate link, the transition practice guides for practitioners and families. So great minds thinking alike here in terms of resources. Thanks for adding a direct link to that. There's some articles, and then also I find this section to be particularly helpful. This has very specific ways if you want to learn more about the transition process or find a presentation, perhaps one of our talks on Tuesdays that we've done prior without having to kind of go through the archives and think, where was that recording that I heard on transition? You can come here and take a look, and you'll find some different tutorials that we've done, along with some other ones that have been done by other nationally focused centers. So this is a great one, getting from here to there, navigating the transition from Part C to Part B. It's a two-part two-part Talks on Tuesdays that that I find to be very, very helpful. Then there's also some tools over here. That one of the last things I wanted to show you. The transition checklists are here. Again, I think someone just posted those as well. As ECTA does some nice work on helping post different tools for us to be able to think about what are the different things that we as providers have to be able to do to make the transition process as smooth as possible for families. What is it I need to know? What is it I need to do? And then these transition checklists are a nice way to think through, am I currently doing this? Do I need to kind of refine this a little bit, or is this something I really need to grow in? I like the self-assessment part of it and helping me think through how do I personally need to grow my skills to make this process even better for families. So that's our learning pad, transition landing pad. But there's also one more resources that I wanted to point out in particular, that these are our learning paths. And this one is particular to transition. So if you complete the learning path, first activity through the last, we think that it'll take you about 4 hours. And then if you pass the quiz at the end, you do get a certificate of completion for those 4 hours. You can do them in a sequence as recommended. You can do just 1 or 2 of them, however it is you want to do them if you're just trying to hone in on some skills. But these activities, the learning paths provide an opportunity for you to do a particular activity and then be able to reflect on that and grow your skills, and also consider how you're going to use those skills in practice. So here's a couple of the different activities that you would see here. Some of them involve reading a resource and thinking through some questions. Others involve watching a series. This one actually has it's like 6 different components, and then here's the quiz at the end. Again, if we want those hours, but that's not necessary. So this is one of those resources that's available to you through our website. Let's go through and take a look and see what else has been added. All right, here we go. We have the Birth to 5 transition guide from Illinois. Let's see who, if you don't mind, we're not able to see who put these up because you guys are popping in as guests. If you put this one up, if you wouldn't mind telling us why you find it helpful and how you use it with families. What about for anyone who put up the other 2 resources, either the Early Childhood Transition Guidebook or the self-evaluation, the transition checklist series? Would you be willing to talk to us about why you find it helpful and how you use it?
Certainly. I put those 2 in. We are currently working on transition. We have moved from having 2 providers only to 1 resigning to leaving us with just myself. And then we've added 2 brand new providers who need to be up and running within a week for service coordination. And they've never done anything with early intervention before. So these are documents that we've been looking for to help them explain transition as they're walking into some new referrals that are transition right away. So we have, we have some of the documents that we have from our state, but these have been even more helpful than what our state has provided. We're in Michigan.
You're in Michigan. Okay. All right. Thank you. As you mentioned, that it's such a steep learning curve, right? With service coordination that you come in, especially being able to understand, as Suzanne mentioned, things like the waiver process, right? What are the different opportunities out there for subsidized childcare? What are the different inclusive opportunities in the community? All of those things. The learning curve is very steep. Not just for transition, right, but for the whole process of being a service coordinator and supporting families. Let's see, I see Tina says, I shared part of this booklet for parents to record their thoughts and it uses parent-friendly language. Tina, I believe you're referring to the Illinois guide, the Birth to 5. All right, great. So wonderful. So what you like about this is that there's an opportunity, it's interactive. There's an opportunity for parents to be able to think through and make notes to themselves, answer questions, and kind of it helps them plan. Wonderful. Corey asked a question on here, wondering if any of you all would be willing to share whether or not you've accessed any of the resources I shared, whether you've gone to the landing page and gone in and taken a look at a resource or a tool or a webinar, or whether you've done perhaps the learning path and would be willing to share your experience with it. Is it Laura Leah? I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. Our names are very similar, it looks like.
It's Laura Lee. Laura Lee.
Laura Lee. All right. So which resources, which site is blocked for you?
I clicked on the link that Seth had shared and I got a response that it was, well, let me see, I think I still have it up, that it's like a malware destination. I think it's probably because people from various localities can probably add information to this. And I think that's probably why there's that risk, but I've sent them an email and hopefully I can get on.
Okay, well, and also what we're gonna do, I'll let you guys know at the end, we're gonna take these resources, and if there's any other resources for those of you who would like to just add them into chat or email them to us later, we're also gonna add those and turn it into a handout and send that out to you and add it to the website. So don't worry if Padlet in particular is hard to get into or it's just not your cup of tea for organizing resources. We'll also organize it into a handout.
You
Awesome.
know, can I jump in,
Please.
Suzanne and Lorelei too? I'm really interested, so I appreciate knowing we are trying Padlet for the first time because we are hearing so many local systems in Virginia are not able to access Google. So this is a new foray for us to try. So I would really appreciate if you, you know, Jenny, I saw you were on the call too, Jenny, if you have any feedback about that from your system as well, please do let us know because we continue to try different ways to be able to interact with folks in all the different systems. And so many systems are blocking some Google things. I don't know what that's called, you know, Google Drive and stuff like Google Files and stuff. So that's really important for us to know. I also wanted to mention, we always do a transition constant contact email blast at the beginning of February to really remind people of all the resources related to transition. I'm going to ask Seth to drop that link in the chat if that's something, because many of the resources that Lorelei highlighted are all in that newsletter that you get. If you are not getting those kinds of resources from us, please do let us know. We want to be sure you're getting on you know, our mailing list, because those kind of things about what's available for different topics, and they're all posted through those email blasts. And then there was one other thing I wanted to just comment. Nikki, I appreciate what you said about Virginia. So we're happy that other states can use any of our resources anytime. They're all free resources. Lorelei, thanks for letting me just jump in on
No,
that.
absolutely. I'm glad you did. Yeah, we'd absolutely love feedback on the use of Padlet too. As Corey said, and Laura-Lee, it would be really helpful to know from you later on if you were able to get access and what that took on your part to be able to do that. Okay, so a couple of other resources are coming in. This is a nice comparison of the part B versus part C. And whoever just added this, is this a resource you use with families And if so, is this something you provide to families? And if so, how is it that you use the resource? Let me see if we can. Sometimes it takes just a minute to get it into chat.
Looks
a
like
quick reference to share with, Tina, a quick reference to share with families. Yeah, just to really be able to, I feel like the side-by-side comparisons can be really helpful. And also any way to visualize it, flowcharts, those kinds of things can be really helpful as well. All right, we are closing in on time here. Suzanne, I'm gonna stop this screen share for now. And then again, what we're going to do is go ahead and make sure that we put this information together for you in a handout, a traditional handout, as well as having the Padlet link to be able to continue to add to. But we will get that out to you. Let's see. Okay. All right. Suzanne, did you have any closing thoughts or?
Yeah, no, I mean, I hope that people have found the information shared helpful today. I know transition can be challenging sometimes. It's overwhelming. It's overwhelming for service coordinators. It's overwhelming for families. It's overwhelming for kids. But I guess if there was one thing that I could kind of, drive home with this is that it's never too early to start talking about transition. And I think the sooner we have those conversations and we empower our families to feel like they at least have some information moving into whatever that transition would be, that hopefully that will help not only transitioning out of early intervention, but kind of transitioning through life and giving people the skills and the resources that they need. So yeah, thank you for letting me ramble today. I appreciate it.
Oh, no. Thank you very much. So sorry, just let me go this. Thank you so much, Suzanne, for all of your sharing of your expertise, your personal learning path in the process, as well as your professional, and for sharing the resources that have been useful to you. Thanks to all of you too for sharing in what you've found to be challenging, what you found to be helpful, and any resources and tools that you find make the transition feel smoother, more successful, less intimidating for families. If you think of anything after we've left this, because a lot of times that's what hits me, I leave and then I start thinking of some other things that I found helpful, perhaps in the beginning while I was learning something, maybe a handout I've developed, something like that. Anything that you'd like to share, please feel free to email that to me. My email is here at the top. And also if you think of any other challenges or strategies that you find useful that you'd like us to include in the handout, please go ahead and share that. If you're interested in facilitating one of these, just like Suzanne did, please let one of us know, and we will be more than happy to support you along the way. We do want to remind you of the Division for Early Childhood Service Coordinator Community of Practice. This is a really, really wonderful group. Just encourage you all to get in there, participate, to learn with other colleagues, and to really have a voice in the field. And we'd like you to stay tuned for more SC chats and to let us know if there are particular topics. Please do reach out and let us know if there's something in particular you'd really like to talk about. It doesn't mean we'll, bug you to be a facilitator. We'll take the pressure off. But if there is something in particular that you other service coordinators you talk with, others in the field you find is a conversation that you guys find yourself coming back to, and you'd like to be able to engage it as a chat, let us know, and we'll work to support you there. So please check your inbox. You'll find that you get a survey there to give us some feedback, and then you'll be able to download the certificate to show that you participated today.